Hi, my name is Preeti Downe, and I'm an attorney who practices matrimonial law.
Hi, my name is Gary Port, and I'm also an attorney that practices matrimonial law.
And this is our fourth webcast, and we're here today to tell you about adultery and how it affects divorce. It's one of the most frequently asked questions. How does adultery affect custody and equitable distribution within the divorce?
I mean, basically, the core question really is whether or not there's a punishment for adultery.
And the answer to that is, well, while religion may be interested in morality, the courts not so much.
And in fact, a person could be found to be a fit parent even though they are openly committing adultery.
Right. For example, a mother who is pregnant with her boyfriend's baby would still be awarded custody in her pending divorce action.
And it creates a lot of anger and a lot of tension in the divorce. And when you have this kind of anger, there is a lot of misinformation that gets spilled out, particularly on the internet. So we're going to try to demystify, straighten up the lines, and explain where adultery has an impact on divorce and where adultery does not have an impact on divorce.
Right. So to start, adultery is one of the grounds to getting a divorce. However, it's also probably the toughest ground to prove.
Yeah, my father, who was an attorney, told me that back in the mid-20th century, it was very tough to get a divorce in general, and adultery was one of the grounds. So what they used to do was the parties would want to get a divorce. They would come to an agreement with their attorneys. Then they would meet at a hotel room, sign the agreement, drink some coffee. The private investigator would be there with his assistant. The husband would then take off his clothes. The assistant would take off her clothes. The private investigator would then take some artful pictures of the husband and the assistant. Then clothes were back on, more coffee drunk, and then everyone left the hotel room.
All in a day's work.
It did start to create some problems.
Right. I imagine that judges started to get a little suspicious when they'd see the same girls in the same pictures in divorce after divorce.
Yeah, the term that the judges used was, I believe, fraud upon the court, collusive divorces. So what the judges started to do was they started to make very, very restrictive rules. And the rules got so restrictive that it became very difficult to get a divorce for adultery. In fact, the adulterer could not walk into the court, put his hand on a stack of Bibles, and say, yes, indeed, I'm an adulterer. The girlfriend couldn't come in and swear that she was an adulterer. The court would not accept that as evidence. So with these very restrictive rules, it became very difficult to get divorces for adultery.
Right. So while it did become difficult to get divorces for adultery, the legislature made it easier to get divorce in general. Now, people can get divorced based upon the no-fault ground without any problem at all, but adultery is still a difficult ground to prove.
And that's what it comes down to, is you can get a divorce because there was a breakdown in the marital relations for 6 months, very easy, but there are still people that want the divorce for adultery. They want the emotional satisfaction of having a judge point his finger at the adulterer and saying, you're bad, you're evil, and saying to the innocent spouse, you're good, you're wonderful, and they believe that this is somehow going to give them an advantage in the divorce as well as the emotional satisfaction. Well, that's not going to happen.
Right. The court isn't interested in why the marriage failed. They're interested in resolving the issues, children, property, debt, money, and getting the case off their calendar.
That's correct. Now, I did say at the beginning there are some exceptions, and now we're going to talk about those exceptions.
One exception is, let's say the husband has a girlfriend, and he starts spending money on the girlfriend. Well, this is what the court calls a dissipation of marital assets. The wife would be entitled to get some of that money back. For example, if he spent $60,000 on a condo for his girlfriend, the wife would be entitled to at least $30,000 back.
So we're not talking about a punishment here. He spent the money inappropriately, the money comes back. It's not the question that we get, which is, if my husband committed adultery, do I get the house?
Right.
That's a different issue. Did my husband spend money on the girlfriend? Do I get that back? The answer is yes, indeed. Then we have the children issues.
Right. My husband committed adultery. Do I get full custody, and does he not get to see them at all?
Well, as Pretty said at the beginning, a pregnant wife can still get custody. When does that not work? Well, one boyfriend, one girlfriend, not an issue. But if you have someone that's engaging in multiple sexual liaisons, Craigslist, pickups at bars, things like that, and there are a number of sexual partners, the court's going to say, this is an unstable lifestyle. This is not good for the children, and it is not going to help them at all. It's going to be detrimental to their health, safety, and welfare. So, non-cheating spouse, you're the better parent, you're going to get the kids.
Right.
Now, there is an exception for the boyfriend and girlfriend, somewhat. If the boyfriend or girlfriend is a danger to your children, drugs,
convicted felons,
alcohol, violence, things like that, you can say to the court, she has or he has a live-in, this is the problem, I should get the children. And the courts can use that as a consideration. Say, you're right, that person is an unstable person, that person's a danger to your children. Does it always work? No. Sometimes the court will say, I will give it to the adulterer or the cheating spouse, but I'm going to issue an order that the boyfriend or girlfriend can't be around the child unsupervised. Not a great solution, but it does happen.
Right. And that's basically our overview on adultery. Join us for our next webcast, which is going to be about child support.
Thank you. See you then.